second pastor of First Congregational Church, and he was hired not only as a pastor, but also as a school teacher. He was going to be the grammar school master. So the connection between this church and the schooling for children goes back 300 years. So another little bit of history. If you'd like to know more about our church, there are folders in the pews in front of you, and please feel free to take one of those with you. I want to let you know that Valley Eye Radio is here tonight, and they are filming, or taping, and we are filming. So just to let you know, if you do ask questions, it will be on your radio show. So kind of exciting. Also, our next lecture is going to be Wednesday, March 20th at Westfield Stage in the Dever Stage Auditorium. And that's our rescheduled lecture on When Two Worlds Meet, the Native Americans of Western Mass. And I'm anxiously looking forward to that. I think that will be a fabulous lecture that's been rescheduled. So I have a pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight. This is Walter Fogg, and he's now retired, but in his retirement, he has, I think, taken on even more. He's very interested in history as well, and his history and the interest in schoolhouses began when they had was it the Wyden Parade? And he was in charge of putting together a float, which everyone in his retirement area built, and they decided to make the float after the old one-room schoolhouse in Wyden, which you'll hear a lot about tonight. That piqued his interest, and he now has become our resident expert in one-room schoolhouses, and we are so grateful to have his knowledge. He speaks to many school groups and other groups in town, as well as he's a volunteer in public schools. I think that's what he's most proud of. And he's volunteered in my school, and I just know he's such a treasure. So please join me in welcoming Walter Fogg.
Thank you, Cindy. And welcome everyone to the First Church here in Westfield. I'm going to start off by reading something that I prepared for tonight, hopefully to create the atmosphere, if you will, of the one-room schoolhouse here in Westfield. This is on the Wyden one-room schoolhouse. It's, I call it the historical diamond in the rough. And I'm going back to January 3rd of 1861. And it reads like this. It had snowed all night, and gusting winds had swept the new fallen snow into deep powdery drifts, disrupting train transportation throughout the air. Sunrise revealed to the residents of West Farms, later to be known as Wyden, how their village had been turned into a winter wonderland. The day would be spent breaking open roads, made impossible by drifting snow. By that evening, a group of hardy souls could be seen making their way to the village's one-room schoolhouse at the junction of Montgomery Road and the Powder Mill Brook. They are gathering to participate in what will later be described as a, quote, public discussion of the national situation, end of quote. It is the evening of January 3rd, 1861, and our nation is teetering upon the precipice of civil war. Joseph King, a successful whip manufacturer in West Farms, has arranged for a Florence resident to address the assemblage. His name is Charles C. Burley, a world-renowned abolitionist who has addressed massive audiences in major cities such as Boston, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and even London and Paris. On this night, however, he will be addressing a small group of farmers gathered in their village's one-room schoolhouse. A surprising contrast, you might think, but Burley traveled often amongst the local hill towns, educated any who would listen to his orations on the evils of slavery. As the assemblage gathered at the schoolhouse that night, the light of the kerosene lamps and the warmth of the potbelly wood stove must surely have been invited. Inside awaited Burley, ready to deliver his well-rehearsed sermon. All was serene on this cold winter's night in the village of West Farms. But forces were already afoot that would tear at the fabric of this community. The following excerpt from an anonymous letter published in the Westfield News Letter of January 9, 1861, describes what transpired. Quote, Mr. Burley went to the schoolhouse and commenced his lecture, and after he had been speaking about half an hour, a man came to the door and said, "We have come after that damn black Republican, and we are going to have him." At this announcement, some young men in the audience arose and said, "You can't have him," and defended Mr. Burley. A general scuffle ensued, but no one was seriously injured. During the melee, a lamp containing a half pint of burning fluid was thrown upon the stove. Unfortunately, only the lower part of it was broken, and there was no explosion. The stove was turned over, and the live coals were scattered upon the floor. A little after this, F.E. Merriam, Esquire, an attorney, stepped aside and made out a writ, praying he would bring the matter to a close. Officer Mallory, who was present, took the writ and went to Mr. Burley and said he had an action against him for assault and battery, but he was disposed to settle the case if he, Burley, would leave the house. Mr. Burley and his friends would make no compromise, and Officer Mallory left the lecturer in possession of the house. Mr. King and others remained in the house and put out, as they supposed, all of the fire. But about 11 o'clock, it was discovered to be on fire, and it was consumed. It was an old house and of little value. The audience who heard Mr. Burley's lecture was composed of Republicans and Democrats. The affair has caused great excitement in our hitherto quiet neighborhood, and I hope that those who caused the disturbance will receive due punishment. The village of West Farms awoke the morning after Burley's lecture to learn their schoolhouse and everything in it no longer existed. Temporary accommodations were made for school to be held in local houses. While planning for a replacement schoolhouse commenced, there was no urgency now, as construction wouldn't start until the arrival of spring. The first substantial sign of progress would occur on March 20th, 1861, when a small parcel of land was conveyed by Frederick Morgan to, and I quote, the inhabitants of school district number 10 in said Westfield, for the consideration of $62.50. A mighty sum. Not by our standards today. Likely the terms of this conveyance had been negotiated in earnest. The consideration suggests a compromise between an asking price of $63 and an offer of $62. The parties splitting the difference by the sum of 50 cents, clearly demonstrating the value in 1861 of such a small sum by today's standards. Further, as a part of the consideration, the buyers would agree to erect and forever maintain at their own expense a good and sufficient fence upon the north and east sides of the above branded premises. I don't know if he wanted to keep the children in the schoolyard or his cows out of the schoolyard, but probably maybe both. Thus, the way was cleared for construction to begin on West Farms' new schoolhouse, just as our nation plunged into civil war. little tech issue here.
Just let me know when you say slide.
Oh, I couldn't see you there. Go ahead. All right. This is the schoolhouse that replaced the one that I was just speaking about. Built in 1861 on Montgomery Road, located in West Farms, which we know today as being White. The picture on the left, obviously, is a much older picture, and it suggests to me, anyway, that the schoolhouse, when that picture was taken, was white with dark trim. Today, the schoolhouse is obviously red with white trim. Next. This is the snowstorm that I mentioned earlier. It was reported in the Springfield Republican. It was quite an event. And this is our friend Charles Burley, who is wearing quite a beard. And the reason for that is, as a young man, he pledged that he would never shave his beard unless and until all the slaves were free. And that didn't happen very quickly, obviously. Next. Now, this is what the local newspapers had to say about the presentation by Mr. Burley. Quote, Charles C. Burley, a rabid abolitionist, delivered a political address at a schoolhouse in West Farms, Westfield, Thursday evening, and uttered sentiments so offensive that a mob gathered and broke up the meeting and celebrated their triumph by making a bonfire of the schoolhouse and its contents. Not quite what the letter described. Go to the next one. A couple days later, the schoolhouse at West Farms, Westfield, which was burned on the night of the 3rd, took fire from the upsetting of a fluid lamp on the stove. Yeah, I guess you could say it was upset. Someone actually threw it at the stove, hoping it would explode. The flames were supposed to be extinguished, but broke out again about 11. The building was old and of little value. C.C. Burley, the radical abolitionist, who thus had South Carolina gag law applied to him in the midst of free New England, was permitted to finish his harangue after abortive attempts to knock down and drag out and then to arrest him for assault and battery. What a different world. Next. Oh, yeah. This is the deed of March 20th, 1861 that conveyed the land for the new schoolhouse in West Farms. Again, it was for $62.50, and the grantor was Frederick Morgan, who, by the way, lived right next door. And the piece of land was really a small piece of land on the corner of his pasture. In addition to the monetary compensation, the inhabitants, and that would be of West Farms, agreed to erect and maintain a good and sufficient fence upon both the north and east sides of the property. Now, this is an historical timeline that I prepared for 1861, just to give us an idea of where we're at historically. Charles Burley obviously lectures at West Farms on January the 3rd, and the same day the school burns to the ground. On March the 4th, Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president, is inaugurated. On the 20th of that month, Frederick Morgan conveys the land for the new school, and on April the 12th, the Civil War begins as rebels fire on Fort Sumter. The following day, Major Anderson surrenders the fort. Most historians mark this as the beginning, the formal beginning of the Civil War. On August the 5th, the first income tax And that had to do with the Civil War. The North had to pay for it in some way, so the birth of the income tax. 3% of income's over $800. On October the 24th, the first transcontinental telegram, San Francisco to New York, takes place. And 2 days later, the Pony Express is disbanded, put out of business by a new technology. Seems like that happens a lot even in our time. On November 19th, Julia Howe wrote The Battle Hymn of the Republic. On November the 26th, West Virginia seceded from Virginia, joining the Union. And on December 30th, U.S. banks suspended payment in gold. No longer could you get a gold piece at your local bank. Now, this is a diagram that I drew up of the existing West Farm Schoolhouse. And the area in gray is the original building. It's 30 feet by, I believe, what is it, 22? It's hard to, from your, yes, 22 by 30. It was just a box, a rectangle. And over time, they added a front entrance to it. And yeah, that's the red area there in the front. The green area is where they added a woodshed, making what is commonly called a woodshed entrance to the schoolhouse. The chimney was on the back wall of the schoolhouse originally, which is typical placement in these types of schoolhouses. And there was an outhouse detached from the school, what we call a six-holder. Girls were on the left, boys were on the right. Sometime later on, that outhouse was connected to the body of the school. So the children no longer had to go out the front door and all the way around the school to the outhouse, sometimes in inclement weather. So this was a grand improvement. Next. So this is the earliest photograph I was able to find. And I estimated that it's circa 1885. And clearly you can see the chimney on the back of the school. There's a teacher and 23 students posing in front of it. And the school, again, looks to be white with dark trim and with shutters on the windows. Next one, please. Now this is 1900. You can see that's Montgomery Road running alongside the schoolhouse, and it's just a dirt road. You can see the chimney on the back of the school, and you can just barely make out a chimney now on the front end of the school, which is interesting because this photograph caught a transition where the heating source was moved from the back wall, or the north wall of the school, to the southern wall to be closer to the wood supply, which was passed through a little door in that front entrance and stacked against that wall. Next. Now this picture was taken in 1914, and we have 13 students, 8 girls and 5 boys. The numbers of students vary greatly depending on the families that either moved in or moved out of the area. Now you can see that the sole heat source is on the front or the southern wall of the school, and the chimney on the back has been removed. They just tore it down to the roof though. The rest of that chimney is still in the schoolhouse, and it's behind the blackboards. And I was able to sneak my camera into a tiny crack to take a picture of what was behind there. And there was the original chimney, the brick just as clean as the day that it was laid as the foundation for the chimney. Next. Now, I took that picture and I had it computer enhanced. As you can see, the people have been removed from the picture. And Andrea York, the young lady who did this for me, did a wonderful job reconstructing what that schoolhouse actually did look like in the past. And it certainly was not the little red schoolhouse with white trim. It was white and it had green trim. Now, we proved that it was green trim when crawling around in the crawl space under the school, we found one of the old shutters. And guess what? It was green. So we had our confirmation that we were on the right track with the colors. So if and when this school is restored, I would hope that it would be restored in this color scheme. Next. Now, in 1931, an interesting thing happened to this school and the school under it on Granville Road in London. They both were chosen by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to become training schools for the Westfield Normal School. So this amounted to 3 training schools. The large one on the corner of School and Washington Street, which was built around 1900, and then the 2 small schoolhouses. Next one, please. This is the graduation program and the local newspaper article for the Wyman Schoolhouse on June the 21st, 1939. And this was the very last group to graduate from this schoolhouse, as it was going to be closed right after this. Next. This is the inside. You can see plainly it was done on a typewriter with a piece of yarn to hold it all together. Next. And this is the original picture that appeared in the newspaper article. It shows the 3 graduates, Eloise Hayden on the left, Gilbert Porter in the middle, and Amy Leonard to the right. There's also, I'm sure, Columbia bicycles in the corner there. Next. This picture is the same 3 graduating students with their teacher, Flora Heald. Next. Now, Flora was from Maine. She taught for a short time in Clarksburg, a small community north of Adams. But in 1933, she was hired by Westfield Teachers College as a rural teacher in the Wyman Training School. And she remained there until the school closed in 1939. Eloise Hayden recalled a saying that Flora used to help the younger children to remember her name. She would say, remember, it's neither healed nor toes, it's mishealed. And Eloise also indicated that she had fond memories of 2 trips that these 8th graders made in 1939 with Miss Heald. She drove her students to the Bennington Monument in Vermont, and on a second occasion to West Point Academy in New York. The students brought their own sandwiches and Flora supplied the punch. Next. Now this photo was taken on the same day as the graduation, 1939. There are your Columbia bicycles. But there's a car parked in the corner there on the left. And I'm told that that was the teacher's car. Next. So I had to find out what kind of car it was. And this was the best match that I could come come up with. And it's basically a Pontiac, a 1936 Pontiac. It had seats that folded up out of the floor in the back of the car. And that's where she stuffed all the kids when they went on trips. Next. Of course, today, this is what the schoolhouse basically looks like. And it's been used for decades as the social center for Wyben. Some of the older residents have told me they actually recall square dances being held there at one time. It's very small, so I just can't imagine. They must not have had an awful lot of square dancers, but it served their community well. Next. This is Eloise Hayden, a David. And her mother was actually a teacher at this school. And of course, she entered her daughter, Eloise, in that school. And she was one of those 3 final graduates. Eloise recalled to me how stressful it was coming from a very small rural schoolhouse to a large city school for high school. Now that would be the school on Smith Avenue. Her and her fellow graduates would be assigned students at the Smith Street School to guide them along the way, which she said was extremely helpful. Next. This is Eloise's desk and chair from the Wyben Schoolhouse. Of course, in 1939, it was closing, and the town offered the desks and chairs to the students to take home. And her mom and dad had the foresight to do so. This is the only furniture that we know of that exists. And you can see from the picture on the right that it's what they call a Haywood Eclipse. And those came from Gardner, Mass. They were manufactured by a former teacher, a fellow by the name of Levi Haywood. Next. Now we're going to move on to another school with a different kind of history. This is the Middle Farms District School, built in 1890 and closed in 1932. It's on North Road. Picture to the left is what it looked like as a schoolhouse. Picture to the right is what it now looks like as a private residence. Next. This is the last of the rural schoolhouses that would be built with Westfield brick. And there's a sample of what Westfield brick looked like. That sample coming from actually from the chimney of the Wyben School. And sample below that was a brick from the Gowdy block on Arnold Street, which was torn down recently for the Transit Authority station. And next to those is what's left of a kiln where the bricks were actually fired to harden them up. It's still standing in the original location in East Farms. Next. The schoolhouse itself, the architecture is unique. The architect responsible for it, his name was Augustus Warren Holton. And I've got a long list of his projects. And believe me, this is just a partial list. There's many more that could be added to it. But it included the Ashley Street School, which has since been torn down. And of course, the Middle Farm Schoolhouse on North Road. And his own residence on 71 Orange Street in 1890. Next. Now, this is the Ashley Street School, sort of before and after pictures, if you will. I also have a picture that was that I found in the directory, Westfield directory from 1903, where a picture or a rendering of the school was used by him to advertise his business. Next. And there is the home of Augustus W. Holton on Orange Street. As you can see, it's very ornate, and it's quite plausible that maybe an architect lived there, and he certainly did. Next. Now we travel to East Farms District. This area was originally known as the Timber Swamp School District, and the school itself is located on the northeast corner of Summit Lock Road and Timber Swamp Road. Again, this was one of the few brick schoolhouses. The brick was locally produced, so it was inexpensive back then. And this school was abandoned in 1900 and no longer exists. As you can see, it's just an open field today. Next. A wonderful article appeared in the Springfield Republican in 1895, and it's concerning Timber Swamp, a Westfield School District of bays now receding into the forgotten past. It was written by Mrs. Sarah Bates Thayer, exclusively for the Sunday Republican. I'll just read a little bit of it for you. The canal furnished an icy highway to the distant schoolhouse. As on sleds and skates we journeyed thitherward, and pleasant it was in summertime to watch the slow-moving, clumsy boats on their winding way to the populous north, a land of mystery to many of us, who had scarcely set foot beyond our native heath. And I wonder, native heath, what is that? Well, according to Webster, there is a tract of wasteland, an extensive area of rather level, open, uncultivated land, usually with poor, coarse soil, inferior drainage, and a surface rich in peat or peat humus. Well, it's a great place to make bricks. But farming, very difficult. The towpath boy, a gem in the rough, usually was an astonishing creature, and we fairly hung upon his words and admired his free and easy manners. He seemed like a youth from another planet, so unlike the well-brought-up boys of our acquaintance. This is going to be hard. Well, in any case, gives you an idea of the uniqueness of this particular school being built so close to the canal and the childhood memories of that particular canal and schoolhouse. Next. This is the West Parish / Mundale District School. It's probably the largest of all the one-room schoolhouses, and I believe it was the last one built. But in any case, yeah, it was, I think, in 1865 or thereabouts. But in any case, the interesting thing about this schoolhouse is what happened to it after it closed. It sat vacant for a few years, and then along came a fellow by the name of McCarthy, Richard McCarthy. He bought the property next door. Now, Richard was a controller at Barnes Airport and a pilot. And we're going back to 1961, he had the idea that he would build a landing strip. He would buy a small aircraft and he would fly it from Mundale to Barnes Airport, work all day, get back in his plane and fly back. Now, the people of Mundale thought he was nuts. And there was plenty of articles where they complained that Mundale was really not the place for an airport. But he persisted and prevailed, and he bought the schoolhouse next door, basically so he could have an additional amount of land for the runway. But he also had something in mind for the schoolhouse itself. And we'll go to the next slide. Well, this particular slide shows a different angle of the schoolhouse. You can see where the outhouse was attached to the back of the school. Let's see, it was built in 1867 for $2,700 approximately. Miss Maria Loomis was the school mistress there for 25 years. And after the closure of the Whiteman Schoolhouse in 1939, the Mundale Schoolhouse became the rural district school. Westfield State Teachers College used it for a rural training school from 1931 until August 8th, 1944, when the school committee voted to close it. When it closed, the school had only 19 students enrolled. The population of these schools varied widely from one year to the next. And the next slide. This is the newspaper article that appeared relative to Richard McCarthy's purchase of the schoolhouse property. He bid $3,000 to buy it, and his bid was accepted and turned out to be the highest. The other bids were $1,500 and $1,000, so substantially less. Next. Well, believe it or not, the FAA still has that airport as Mundale Airport. So we have two airports in the city of Westfield. We have Barnes and we have Mundale Airport. Next. And this is what he had in mind for our schoolhouse. He tore out let me see, this would be the eastern side of the school. Installed overhead doors and made it into a hangar for his airplane. You never know what a one-room schoolhouse is going to end up being. Next. Now we're back over to the north side again, and this is the Pachasik District School. It is out on Pachasik Road, just below the junction of West Road. And obviously this is now a private home. Next. A former Pachasik schoolhouse was destroyed by careless disposal of smoking materials on 30th, 1874. A lot of these buildings met their demise to fire. And in this case, they pinned it on a vagrant. Well, let's see, they called him a tramp, the poor fellow. They claimed that he had disposed of his pipe near the schoolhouse, and that was the reason that it burned down at night. We'll never know the true reason for the loss of the school. But the cost of a new schoolhouse was $1,423.40. And it opened in the fall of 1874. Next. Now, a former student shared some of her memories with me, and I've listed them as bullets here. The school, according to Phyllis Boyceau Porter, had a 3-seat privet attached to the back of the school with an entrance on one side. Children picked the farmer's rhubarb behind the school during recess, I'm sure to the chagrin of the farmer. The school closed in 1900, reopened again in 1914, and finally was abandoned in 1932. The school mistress was Miss Sullivan, but Phyllis Porter attended school there. Phyllis's parents boarded the teacher for 1 month of each school year. This was a practice that the school teachers often referred to as boarding around. They went from one family to the next. They were paid very little, usually very young, and they were given a tremendous amount of responsibility. Next. Now we're in the southern part of Westfield, the Southwest Fox District School. Built in 1893, it closed in 1931. This particular school always had a problem with low population. It would be open for a few years and then have to close for a few years, depending on how many children were in the district. Next one, please. The thing that I found was very interesting was a lawsuit that was filed by the Westfield School Board versus George Goki. And it basically was failure to send this child to school. And this is back October 2nd, 1905. Now, Goki, like a lot of his neighbors, protested the closing of the Southwest District School, or the Fox School, because it required his child and the children of others to be transported to Londale out of their district to go to school. He decided that he would refuse to send his child to the Londale school unless the school department provided the transportation wagon to come to their home to pick his child up. Now the judge ruled, and I quote, there was nothing in the law to prevent a man who has children to be transported out of the district from demanding that the team call his home, and Goki was ordered discharged. So I presume from that finding by that judge that a team was sent out every day to pick these children up, take them to Wyndham, and then bring them home in the evening to their front door. Okay? Now, we've all been in a situation where we're behind a school bus, right? And it stops at every street, at every corner, and sometimes at every house. And usually there's about a dozen cars parked on that side street, waiting for the children to get off the bus so they can be transported 4 or 5 houses down the street. When you're behind the school bus and you find yourself in a situation like that, maybe you'll think of Mr. Goki and his children and the Fox District School. In a way, maybe it all started there. Now this article, of course, the closing of the Fox District School, November the 10th, 1931. All those students were transferred to the Green District School, which was on the corner of School and Washington Streets, where the police station is now, and Fort Meadow schools by the Chapels Trucking Company. And these were teams of horses and school wagons, I guess you'd call them. The teacher, Miss Harissa N. Atwell, was transferred to 3rd grade at the Prospect Hill School. Next. Oh, about 3 years later, the empty schoolhouse on Halloween night, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it could. October the 30th, 1933, a fire broke out and the schoolhouse was burnt to the ground. I believe the only thing that was left was the flagpole in the front yard of the school. Next. Now we go on to the Stephen Sackett District School. This school was on the intersection of Western Avenue and Northwest Road. Today, a brown ranch house sits on the very foundation that was the Stephen Sackett Schoolhouse. Now, Mr. Sackett was an innkeeper. I believe it was a tavern, owner of a tavern. It was also a stagecoach stop, so he was a fellow of means. And he owned a lot of land in this particular area. And he deeded this piece of property to the town so they could build a schoolhouse. Now the deed contained the language that when and if this piece of property ceased to be used for school purposes, it would revert immediately back to either he or his heirs. And that's exactly what happened in this case. His heirs inherited the property. The schoolhouse was in very poor repair, so the town had it burned to the ground just to get rid of it. Next. And then the schoolhouse to the left was built to replace it. And it was located on 12 Northwest Road, which a home now occupies. It's, I don't believe it's the schoolhouse at all. From my research, it was built somewhere around 1933, I believe, 35. But that is the lot where that schoolhouse stood. Now, this area, originally being the 2nd District, eventually became known as the Northwest District. And lastly, the Madagascar District. Madagascar, I thought that was very unusual, especially for a New England town like Westfield. Next. Now, this schoolhouse had a unique history. Around 1902, the schoolhouse was closed to students, but it was reopened as a pest house. And obviously, this is a drawing, if you will, and it's not very professional. It looks like it was drawn on a napkin. But that's what was published in the local newspaper as a rendering of what the layout of the pest house would be. Next. Now, this appeared in a publication. And let me just read this. While my host was attending to his stock at the barn, I took a walk about the place. 2 or 3 houses besides the tavern are all there, but is all there is to the village, which number seems not even to warrant the dignity of a name unless it is designated by the doubtful title of Madagascar, a christening it received in times past from certain drunken stage drivers who used to carouse here. What significance that particular title has, it would be hard to say. So I said, I gotta find out. I gotta look into this. Next. This is a photograph, again from an old journal. And you can't see it, but underneath the photograph is the name Madagascar. And I think that's Mount Toccoa in the background there. Next. This is something that I pulled out of the 1969 celebration or anniversary book for the city of Westfield. And I found it fascinating. In 1884, a forlorn-looking figure stepped out of the immigrant detention center in Castle Garden and into the teeming streets of New York. Gregory Alexak, in his voluminous Slovak peasant garb, with no money and no destination, started walking. As he wandered into the countryside of New England, his strange appearance and unintelligible speech made him an object of ridicule, and he was taunted and stoned. Traveling in the safety of the night, he arrived in Pittsfield, and a friendly farmer directed him to Westfield, where there was a settlement of Bohemians who spoke his language. At last he was able to orient himself in the unfamiliar land. Aleksik is believed to have been the first Slovak in the state of Massachusetts. He found work on a farm in the Western Avenue section of the town, where the rolling Berkshire Mountains in the background were vaguely reminiscent of the scene of his native village of Zadire. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but that was my best try. After 4 years, he returned to Slovakia and described enthusiastically the home he had made in Westfield. In the next few years, about 200 of his countrymen followed him back to America, and many to Westfield. For nearly 1,000 years, the Slovaks had suffered under the rule of the Magyars of Hungary. Unabashedly chauvinistic, they saw in an opportunity in the United States to preserve their national integrity and practice their language and customs. Many Slovaks had fled to the coal fields of Pennsylvania, where they found the life was hard and the work unrewarding. They heard of the settlement in Westfield and migrated as well to this location. Now keep in mind, what they are describing here in Mr. Aleksik is almost the belief that Westfield is the promised land for his people. Next. I found this interesting story about the Emperor of Madagascar. He's a Slovakian. His name is Maurice Benyavsky. His story is complex. We could spend the whole evening just talking about this guy. He traveled all over the world. He fought in the Polish army. He fought in the French army. And he fought in the Revolutionary Army in this country. He traveled to the Orient, Japan, Korea, and he also traveled to Madagascar, off the coast of Africa. And for reasons unto himself, he felt that Madagascar could be the promised land for the Slovakian people. And he decided that he would settle it, found a community, which he did. And for 3 years, he had convinced the natives there that he was their emperor. Next. This is the Noble District Schoolhouse. I had fun with this one, because it's not where it's supposed to be. Let's see, it was originally built on the corner of Noble and South Streets in 1855 at the horrific sum of $750. It and the Main Street District School served this area of our town until 1898, when they both were replaced by the new 8-room Ashley Street Schoolhouse. The old Noble Street Schoolhouse remained empty for several years, until converted into a private residence. The new owner moved the old school building across Summer Street to its present location. Other than the dormer window and the small front porch, the building's appearance remains virtually unchanged. The architecture, if you look at it, yeah, it does look an awful lot like an old schoolhouse. Next. This was an article that I found in the newspaper, Old Days of Schools That Are No More. And I was interested in one section here. With the passing of the years, the town, Westfield, grew that way. Houses were built. Building space grew scarcer, and someone cast an eye on the old schoolhouse. This is the Noble Street Schoolhouse. Here, to be sure, was an opportunity. Across the street it went, on rollers, laced atop a firm foundation, and as the old pupil viewed it on a recent day, after an absence of years, transformed into a modern bungalow with a porch, dormer window, and other little embellishments, a 20th century home with children playing around the door. Next. This is a shot showing the location of the school originally, and of course in the background is where the school ended up on Summer Street. Next. This one I'm dedicating to you, Cindy, the new teacher. On the morning of the new teacher's arrival, after devotions and other preliminaries, while she was busy at the desk writing, the comedian started his activities with blowing paper wads over to the boy in the corner, and otherwise making himself a hero in the eyes of the school. All this progressing merrily, but as he turned around to project a missile, he felt himself lifted from his seat. He yanked out to the middle of the room and felt the application of a 2-foot ruler. Knowing that a defensive battle is a losing battle, the teacher had decided to attack the enemy and make the engagement short, quick, and decisive. Or as we say in these days, snappy. After that, she was mistress of all she surveyed. And I'm told I'm running out of time, which I always do. So I'll turn the program back to you, Cindy. Oh, okay. Yeah. Are there any questions that we've provoked up till now from the audience? When my wife allows me to do it, which means probably never. Any other questions? Yes?
I wondered why they called it a test house.
Well, they were treating disease there. The more serious illnesses of the time.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. It said on a previous slide that the test house was for small towns.
Yes, correct. Way in the back.
Where was the location of the schoolhouse on Sackett Road?
On Sackett Road? I have that on the slide. I'd have to go back to it. But off the top of my head, I can't recall the names of the streets. But it's near Janice Road, that's right. It's right near where the two roads intersect. Janice and Sackett. Yes, it is. It wasn't there when the schoolhouse was there. Yes?
Remember a building, I could be wrong, but I didn't hear it mentioned tonight, a schoolhouse on the corner of Little River and Shaker.
Yes.
Was that schoolhouse there?
That was the Little River Schoolhouse.
Oh, that was a little.
Yeah, I would have gotten to that, but Cindy wouldn't let me. Yeah. Yeah, that was torn down, I don't know, probably 20, 25 years ago. Oh my goodness, there it is. Yeah. Any other questions? Way in the back.
The anti-abolition sentiment from
Yeah.
that caused the fire. Do you or others in the room know? That surprised me. That was news to me. How representative was that Springfield Republican article? Do we think of Westfield feelings about abolition? Anyone know?
Well, I think it was very biblical, actually. But there were people of different minds on the subject, obviously. But it seemed that, well, again, the newspapers back then did more editorializing than just reporting news. And it made for colorful reading, but sometimes it really distorted when it happened. Yeah. Anyone else?
How many schools were there in Westfield before Mosley and actually were built? The small
The small one-room schoolhouses. There was 4 of those. They were brick, they were 2-room schoolhouses, built around the turn of the century. Well, there's one right there, a 2-room schoolhouse. That was really unusual because it was a prefabricated building, and it was shipped in over the rails and dragged up East Mountain Road and installed on the foundation. And this is the one that's directly across from the emergency ward at Noble Hospital. Oh, and this is my picture with a group of students back in 2008. They were my first group of great listeners. And they're probably all graduating from college now. Any other questions? Yes?
Yes, I'm doing the genealogy of my great-grandparents.
Isn't that fun?
My grandmother was born on Cross Street. I know it is on Cross Street, there's a playground. Was there a school there at one time? Down at the end of Cross Street.
Yeah, that would have been the Ashley Street School.
That was Ashley Street?
Yeah.
And when did that close now again?
Oh, boy. I can't tell you when it closed as a schoolhouse, but it was torn down just a few years ago. It was supposed to make way. Pardon?
I imagine that's when my grandmother may have gone to school.
Could very well have.
She was born at 7 Cross Street.
Yeah, could very well have. That school was very interesting because it was built in what is called Logerville. And it was built to accommodate the students, the families that came to Westfield to work in the Loger bicycle plant down there. And therefore the school was built as a bicycle-friendly school. They installed ramps along the staircases where the teachers and children could roll their bicycles in and out of the school. Very interesting. Okay.
How about a nice round of applause for the speaker? Outstanding job. I'm Harry Rock, for those of you that haven't figured that out yet, president of Westfield 350. I was at as we get to all of these, how many of you were at the last one at Westfield State University when Walter spoke? Yeah. So I had a precursor. My wife and I live in Wyman, and I was thrilled to see the Wyman school that we're so familiar with, West Farms, and Eloise, who we personally knew before she passed away, and many of the names that we've become acquainted with up there. So I just love this walk down memory lane. Part of our goal, and you've heard me say this before, was to ensure that the Westfield 350 celebration wasn't just about celebratory features of parades and fireworks, which we have done and we will be doing May 17, 18, 19. Make sure that's on your calendar because we're going to have parades and fireworks that weekend. But we really wanted it to be educational and for people to have an opportunity to really learn of our past. And it has been fascinating. Ann and I have lived here for 28 years, but I've learned so much about our history just in the last few weeks as being a part of these lectures, and it's just been fascinating. And we have, this is number 8 for us. They are starting to count up, but we have 14 of them, so there's another 6 or so to go. So we're really excited about what's coming up because we've got some great topics. I want to recognize our State Senator Humison is here in the back there. Don, good to have you here with us. Thank you for coming. Good to see you snuck in. I hadn't seen him earlier. Also wanted to say thanks to the friends of our friends of the First Congregational Church. It felt like coming back home here when we came back into this wonderful setting, because for me, I don't feel like I'm in a church. I feel like I'm in the old town hall, and it just is so comfortable with all my friends here coming to learn more of our history and our past and our heritage as a city. So we thank them for doing everything that they've been doing for us. There will be a reception out through that door once I'm done with my remarks. I'll keep that quick because I'm the only thing between you and that's always well worth going into. But I am thrilled to have everybody here, many faces that I recognize, neighbors, friends, and faces that I don't recognize. So thanks to those of you who are just coming for the first time for being here. You know, as I talked about the educational piece, we've really been committed to that. Just probably 2 weeks ago, we made a gift. Many of you hopefully have purchased. We have merchandise tables both at the front and out on the side. But the Westfield History book, this has been a phenomenal resource to us. This will sell out, and once it's gone, it's gone. We're not doing a second run. We printed 2,000 of these, so make sure that you get those. But we did make a presentation to all of the Westfield schools. So every school in Westfield, including St. Mary's, who I presented to today, has a copy of that book as a part of their library. Because again, we wanted to bring this education to them. And the other thing that's really exciting, and any of you that follow me, particularly on Facebook, you'll see those photographs and stuff, but we have been working with Kathy Palmer and Lori Furkey, have put together a vignette. Some of the actors are in the audience right now, but we have put together a historical vignette that has been going into all the schools. We've been to 5 schools already. We will hit every elementary school, and we're rolling this out to the 3rd and 4th graders. Started on Monday, we'll end on Friday. But every 3rd and 4th grader in the city, including St. Mary's, all the public schools, all those children will have an opportunity to participate in a play that really focuses on the history of this beautiful city that we live in. And then following the play, all those actors are all in costume, have been going into each classroom, and they've been doing workshops with the kids on items of what people might have used before the days of electricity, or the canal, all different topics. And it's just been fascinating to watch these kids sitting there on the floor or in their seats with their desks, just soaking it in. So it's really been fun. And for us, it's been about bringing the history of this city to the schools to ensure that our youngsters really appreciate and embrace what a wonderful city this is. And you can only do that if you know of our history. And this was a great walk down history lane tonight. I really, really enjoyed it, as I think all of you did. So I thank you all for that. All of our lectures are being videotaped, by the way. Our videographer is up on the balcony. Pete Coles, give a wave to Pete. Thank you, Pete. Those are being taped, and if you go to our website, westfield350.org, if you go under events and activity, or events and trivia, I think. If you go down, you'll find a little button that says lectures. And if you click on that, you will find all of the lectures. We don't have all of them uploaded yet, because some of them are still being produced and cleaned up a little bit. But you'll find many of the ones that have already occurred. So if you have not made them, you can go back and watch them. Or if there's one that you particularly liked, you can go back and watch that as well. But certainly get to westfield350.org. That's where we communicate everything that's going on. And also Facebook at Facebook 350. We also have for sale these commemorative coins. These are $10. It's our logo, and it's both painted on one side and natural on the other side. That's a great commemorative item for you to consider. Of course, we have our illustrious warm gray scarf that you can wrap around your neck on these cold nights. These are $5. So that's a bargain basement thing that you might want to pick up. We also have, which is really cool, I was going to bring some in tonight, we've actually sold out, so we're waiting for the next shipment of coming in. But Elm Street